Hello. Today is with me Mahana Esfahani, one of the most prominent harpsichordists in the world, and who was invited here to the Academy to carry out some musical workshops for students. Is it your first time in Katowice?
Yes, I've never been to Katowice before. So.
And do you like the city?
Very much so. I haven't seen very much of it, but tonight I will fix that.
Okay, and do you like the Academy, the building?
It's amazing. I'm having a wonderful time. I'm so impressed by the facilities and by the quality of the students, of course.
Mm-hmm. You are carrying out here some musical workshops, and do you see any differences between students in Poland or around the world?
Polish students are certainly the most hardworking ones I've met.
Okay. So, do they offer something special here in Poland?
Well, I mean, I don't do generally very much teaching, sort of in my life. So I don't deal with that many students around the world. But I mean, Poland is just generally an impressive country. Everything in Poland is quite impressive. People work hard. People strive for excellence. I think what the students bring here is that they don't accept that something is good enough. Nobody has ever said to me here teaching that this is good enough, that it's pretty good. And this is nice. It's a pleasure to work with people like this.
Okay. Do you play here and with students more Baroque music or more contemporary?
Both.
Both, because you play both of them, and
yes.
And do you have any idea to couple these two kind of music?
Well, I mean, in my concerts all the time I couple them, but actually it's been nice to see students so open to both. Both have their complications.
Mm-hmm. Yes, some composers have some problems with writing with harpsichord, and do you have any approaches, any advices for composers writing for harpsichord?
Well, so many good composers have written for the harpsichord. It would logically follow that if a good composer has written for the instrument, it must be a good instrument. That's sort of how I look at it.
Okay, you have played, for example, the harpsichord concerto by Henryk Mikołaj Górecki.
Of course.
What was your approach to this piece?
To work hard. I mean, it's quite an intense work. We have two great concertos from Polish composers. There is, of course, Górecki, but also Penderecki. There's the great partita for harpsichord and two electric guitars and orchestra. And there's bits and pieces of Lutosławski and other composers. Well, I mean, there is a certain, if I can say that there's any unified aesthetic, I would say that there's a certain intensity in 21st century Polish music. But my approach was, we don't have a great deal of historic music from Poland for harpsichord. So you might say that modern Polish composers were free to experiment with a wholly new and different medium, right? It was a medium for which there were no sort of anxieties about its antiquity. And so accordingly, you have a sort of relatively clean aesthetic slate, particularly for Penderecki. I mean, the Penderecki is a miraculous piece. And I mean, my approach was to put myself in the place of a composer who was confronting a wholly new sound. This is very different from, I think, composers in countries where there is a great historical tradition of cembalo music, of harpsichord music. And it certainly shows in these composers. Okay,
and do you have in your mind any great challenges with contemporary pieces you've played?
Look, I mean, every composer, some composers will disagree with me, but I think composers are essentially trying to reinvent musical language with every new piece. This is kind of one of the difficulties of contemporary music, is that we don't have a central musical language the way that there was in the past. I mean, for every composer, ideally, more or less, we have distinct personalities. For example, you cannot say that about Neapolitan opera in the 18th century. Basically, they all sound the same. Vinci and Feo and all these sort of nameless composers, Hassa perhaps even, and Jomelli, and all of them, they sound quite similar to one another. Whereas someone like Handel sounds completely distinct. You always know that Handel is Handel. And I think, imagine now in contemporary music where everyone is a Handel, right? Everyone is this distinct personality, which means, of course, that you cannot fall back on sort of systems of technique, sort of even approaches to tonality or lack of tonality. I think that all of this has fallen apart, which is not a negative thing. I think it's a perfectly positive thing. And so the job, the duty of the performer becomes one of being a vehicle for a wholly distinct aesthetic every time. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of practice.
Yes, and do you have any idea with, as I said before, with coupling this really new ones, contemporary music with the music from past, with the idea of contrast, or by looking for some similarities between them?
I think similarities are something that I would leave to the perception of the listener. Mm-hmm. My efforts are on behalf of listeners whose sensibilities are commensurate with those of the creator of the music, whether it's modern or old. Having said that, in a museum, how often do we put pictures of old masters next to new works? Not that often. I wish we would do it more. I wish we would do it in the same gallery, in the same room. I think it would be interesting. And I think that, I went to hear some friends of mine recently play a concert, and there was one modern piece, and the rest of the music was Schumann and Beethoven. And I was sitting next to a sort of older couple, and afterwards they complained about the new piece. And I said to them, well, the Beethoven, it was Kreutzer Sonata. And I said, well, the Kreutzer Sonata was a new piece at one time too. Yes, but it's good. And he said, well, yes, but it's good music. I said, many people in the time of Beethoven didn't think, they thought it was noise. He said, yes, but I'm allowed to judge it. And I thought, well, buying a recording or buying a ticket to a concert doesn't actually give you the right to do anything. It gives you the right to perceive the music. And if you've heard it once, well, then listen to it again. Listen to it 5 times, listen to it 10 times before you know what to think of it. I mean, we have taken 300 years to hear the music of Johann Sebastian Bach, and we still don't know who was Bach. You want to tell me who is, I don't know, Penderecki died recently, but you want to tell me that who is John Adams? You want to tell me that who is George Benjamin, or Diana Burrell, or Gavin Bryars, or Neuwirth, or Marjatka, or Srinka, or whoever, right? I mean, they are still living. In that sense, as a performer, I don't have a right to do anything, actually. I mean, I don't even know if I have a right to inspire you to see similarities. What I have is a duty for you to hear it, and for you to hear it well. And whatever conclusions you come to, today you might come to one conclusion. In 10 years, you might come to a different conclusion. That's really, I'm not justified to curate that. I think it's and when I deal with living composers and talking to them about their music, I don't interfere. It's not my job. They can interfere with themselves. It's my job to learn the music.
So what guides you with your repertoire choices, with music from past centuries and with contemporary?
Well, I mean, there's plenty of bad music in the past. There's a lot of bad music that's old. Just because it's old doesn't mean it's good. And it's really funny. And then sometimes people misunderstand old music. For example, there are times where there are certain things that someone like Emanuel Bach is doing, where if you knew what he is saying, you would kick him out of the hall. What he's saying, what he's really saying to you would get banned by a dictatorship or an oppressive government. But people think because it's old, isn't that charming? And there's plenty of innocuous new music. I mean, I guess that didn't really answer your question. I look for good music. And what I thought was good music 10 years ago is very different from today. I guess I should admit, I use the chance to commission music to learn, to be a student, to learn about new things. Like, I would really like to commission, I mentioned Diana Burrell. She's someone I would really like to commission. Or James Dillon is a composer I find super fascinating. I would love to commission him. And someone with James is because I don't really understand his music. So I guess it would be a great chance for me to learn about his music. I mean, that's what I did with Paul Ruders and Ben Sorensen. Sorry, two different composers. I didn't really understand either of them, so I commissioned 2 pieces from each of them. And now I understand, now I listen to their music. Per Norgard wrote a very good work for cembalo, Gemini Rising. I don't really get it yet. But at some point I will force myself to play it. I recently performed several times some harpsichord works by Hans Werner Henze. Now I really connect with him in a very deep way. Henze's music moves me very deeply. Do I understand it? Oh, no. So.
Okay, you've realized a number of critically acclaimed recordings. Was there any project that was especially crucial, especially pivotal in your career?
Well, I mean, now the big project is I'm recording all the keyboard works of Johann Sebastian Bach, and this is for Hyperion. Of course, I did Goldberg variations for Deutsche Grammophon, but partitas and toccatas and French suites and Well-Tempered Clavier, the first book will come out this year, and some other inventions and symphonias and things I've done for Hyperion. And I mean, this was quite meaningful to me because, I mean, it's Bach, that's quite meaningful. Something I'm very proud of is I did a recording of new music and contemporary sort of music with tape and electronics and these things. It was called Muzyki with a question mark because it was named after a piece by Luc Ferrari from the 1970s. I would love to do another album like that, this time of music that was written for me. So I would have Strinka, Ruders, Michael Barkley, Nilufar Habibian, who's an Iranian composer now in Europe. There's Anahita Abbasi, a number of people, Francisco Cole, Daniel Kudane, sort of figures like this. And it's time, of course, Miroslav Strinka, it's time that I record these.
Okay. And so, do you have any advices for young musicians, for young harpsichordists?
Be open. Push your boundaries. Run away from certainty. Certainty is your biggest enemy. Uncertainty is your friend.
Okay. Thank you for this conversation.
Thank you.